The morning started the way most training days do, with cold coffee, loud boots on concrete, and a sky that had not yet decided what kind of day it wanted to be. Fort Bragg in October has a particular smell. Wet grass and gun oil and something else underneath, something you never quite name but always recognize. The kind of smell that tells your body to pay attention even before your brain catches up. Corporal Danny Reeves had been on that base for 14 months. He knew the smell. He knew the sound of the range before the first round went downrange, the way the wind moved through the tree line on the east side, the way voices carried differently on cold mornings, the particular silence that settled over a group of men right before everything got serious. He was 22 years old. He had trained hard for 2 years to get to where he stood that morning, behind an M4 carbine, in a line of soldiers, doing the kind of work that never makes the news because it is supposed to be ordinary. Repetition. Fundamentals. The same drill, again and again, until your hands know what to do before you tell them. He was not the biggest man in his unit. He was not the loudest. He did not tell long stories at dinner or collect the kind of attention that some men seem to carry around with them like extra weight. He was the kind of soldier who showed up early, left late, and let the work speak. And the work, on most days, spoke clearly. That morning, his rifle spoke clearly too. His first group of 5 rounds landed tight, not lucky tight, but earned tight. The kind of tight that comes from 10,000 repetitions and a willingness to be honest about every mistake. He checked his target, adjusted nothing, and fired again. Same result. He lowered the rifle, rolled his shoulders once, and waited for the next command. That was when he noticed the other group. They arrived the way Navy SEALs tend to arrive at joint training events, without ceremony, but with the kind of quiet that makes everyone else aware of them. There were 8 of them. They set up 2 lanes to the right. They moved with the particular ease of men who have done this so many times that efficiency has become automatic. No wasted gestures. No extra words. Everything they did looked like it had already been decided. Danny watched them the way any young soldier watches operators. Not with fear. Not with jealousy, exactly. More like the way you watch a very good carpenter work, with a respect that is honest and a curiosity that cannot help itself. The man who stood out was the one in the center of the group. His name, Danny would learn later, was Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb. He was 38 years old, though he carried it the way some men do, like the years had added weight instead of taking it, and all that weight was useful. He was big across the shoulders in a way that seemed structural rather than decorative. His face had the look of a man who had made a lot of decisions in very little time, in very bad places, and had been correct often enough to trust himself completely. He carried a custom rifle, a .300 Blackout built on a platform that had clearly been adjusted and readjusted over years of personal preference. The kind of weapon that tells you something about the man holding it. It was not for showing. It was for using. Webb watched Danny's target from 2 lanes over. He watched without making it obvious that he was watching. But Danny noticed. You develop a sense for that kind of attention in the military. You feel it the same way you feel a change in temperature, not dramatically, but clearly. After Danny's second string of fire, Webb walked over. Not hurrying. Not hesitating. The walk of a man who has never in his adult life been unsure about whether he belongs somewhere. He stood beside Danny and looked at the target downrange. He tilted his head slightly, the way a man does when he is pretending to be more casual than he is. Not bad, Webb said. 2 words. The second word doing almost all the work. Danny said, "Thank you, Chief." Webb looked at Danny's M4. Then he looked at his own rifle, which was resting against the bench beside him. Then he looked back at Danny with the particular expression of a man who has just had an idea that he finds amusing. "You want to try something different," he said. Danny looked at the rifle. He said nothing for a moment. "Use my rifle instead," Webb said. And he smiled. Not unkindly, but with something in it. A test wrapped in generosity. A hand extended that was also, slightly, a measuring tape. The men around them stopped pretending not to listen. That is the thing about moments like this. Nobody announces that something interesting is happening. Nobody has to. The air changes. Conversations nearby lose their thread. Eyes find reasons to drift in a certain direction. Within 30 seconds, without a single word being said about it, there were 25 men paying attention to what happened next. Danny looked at the rifle. It was heavier than his M4. Different balance point. The configuration was built for a specific body, a specific set of preferences, a specific understanding of how a weapon should feel in particular hands. Using someone else's custom rifle is not like borrowing a pen. It is like being handed someone else's signature and asked to sign with it. He picked it up. He did not make a face. He did not comment on the weight or the configuration. He ran his hands along it in the way that any serious shooter does when introduced to an unfamiliar weapon, not admiring it, just learning it. Chamber check. Safety position. Trigger feel. He pressed the stock to his shoulder and found his cheek weld and adjusted twice, small adjustments, honest ones. Webb watched all of this. The smile had not left his face. What Webb was thinking, standing there, was something that men in his position think more often than they say out loud. He was thinking that he already knew how this ended. He was 38 years old and he had been doing this since before this kid had started high school. He had shot this rifle in conditions that a training range in North Carolina does not have words for. He knew what the rifle could do. He knew what it usually did in unfamiliar hands. He was thinking this was going to be instructive. Danny settled into his stance. He breathed out slowly. He found the target, 200 yards, a standard silhouette, nothing dramatic. He stayed there for a moment, just breathing, just existing inside the shot before the shot happened. He fired. The round went where he sent it. He fired again. Again. 5 rounds. Slow and deliberate. Each one placed with the patience of a man who is not trying to impress anyone, which, in the end, is the only way to actually shoot well. He lowered the rifle and looked downrange. The group was tight. Tight in the way that makes experienced men go quiet before they react. Tight in the way that does not need explanation or celebration because the paper already said everything there was to say. There was a pause. It lasted about 3 seconds. In a different kind of moment, 3 seconds is nothing. In this kind of moment, 3 seconds is a very long time. Webb looked at the target. His expression did not collapse into something dramatic. He was not a man who did that. But the smile changed. It stayed on his face because he was a professional and professionals keep their expressions managed in front of audiences. But something in it shifted. The humor of it had gone somewhere else, and what replaced it was something quieter and more honest. He nodded. Once. A small nod. The kind that costs a proud man something. Nobody cheered. Nobody made a speech. This was not that kind of moment. These were not that kind of men. The soldiers around them simply returned to what they had been doing, slowly, without drama, the way water finds its own level. The moment dissolved back into the morning like it had never been a moment at all. Except that everyone there would remember it. Danny handed the rifle back with both hands. Muzzle down. Eyes up. Everything squared away, everything correct. The way he had been trained to return a weapon to the person who owned it. Not as a statement. Just as a fact about how he did things. Webb took it. He looked at it for a moment before he set it back against the bench. Not long. Just a beat. The kind of look a man gives something when it has surprised him. Danny went back to his lane. His M4 was waiting exactly where he had left it. He picked it up, settled back into his stance, and continued the drill. The same drill he had been running before any of this started. The same fundamentals. The same quiet repetition that nobody notices until suddenly they do. What he felt in that moment, he would have had trouble naming if anyone had asked him. It was not triumph. Triumph is loud and sharp and leaves a mark. This was something softer than that. Something more like the satisfaction of a man who said nothing and let the truth say it for him. Webb ran his own drills. He was excellent, and this is important, because the story is not that Webb was bad. He was extraordinary. He had earned everything he carried, every piece of equipment, every qualification badge, every quiet reputation that preceded him into a room. He was one of the finest combat shooters on that range that morning. He had just, briefly, forgotten that excellence is not a private possession. It does not belong to one type of soldier. It does not live only in special operations units or custom rifles or men who have been to certain places. It grows anywhere that discipline and patience grow. It grows in 22-year-old corporals who show up early and leave late and let the work speak. That was what the target said. That was what the paper announced, in the language of tight groups and honest rounds. Later that afternoon, during a break, one of Webb's teammates walked past Danny and stopped. The man was younger than Webb, maybe 30, with the kind of easy confidence that comes from knowing your own ability without needing to display it. He looked at Danny for a moment. "Nice shooting this morning," he said. Danny said, "Thank you." The man nodded and walked on. 3 words and 3 words. That was all. But Danny understood what was being said underneath those words. In the military, compliments are not given loosely. They are not social lubricant the way they sometimes are in other places. When a Navy SEAL tells a young corporal that his shooting was nice, after watching that young corporal do what Danny had done that morning, it means something specific. It means, "We saw you." It means, "You were real." That meant more than the shot itself. That evening, back in the barracks, Danny sat on his bunk and field stripped his M4 the way he did every night after a range day. The routine of it was comforting. Disassemble. Clean. Inspect. Reassemble. His hands knew the order of operations the same way lungs know the order of breathing. He thought about the morning. He thought about Webb's smile and the way it had arrived so confident in its own joke, and the way it had quietly shifted when the paper told a different story. He did not feel proud of that shift, exactly. He had not set out to change anything on anyone's face. He had set out to shoot well, which was the only thing he ever set out to do on a range. The rifle felt comfortable in his hands. His rifle. The one that fit his body, his preferences, his thousands of hours of repetition. He had picked it up and it had recognized him the way a tool recognizes a craftsman, not with warmth, because rifles are not warm, but with the simple accuracy that comes from long partnership. He thought about the borrowed rifle, too. The way it had felt foreign in the first 10 seconds and then, gradually, less so. The way a shooter with real fundamentals can adapt to an unfamiliar weapon because fundamentals do not belong to any particular rifle. They belong to the shooter. They travel. That was what Webb had not fully calculated. He had offered his rifle as a challenge, as a way of saying, "Let's see if the kid can handle something at this level." And Danny had picked it up and discovered, as he pressed his cheek to the stock and breathed and steadied and waited, that the level was not in the rifle. It had never been in the rifle. The level was in the hands holding it. The level was in the 10,000 repetitions, the early mornings, the honest mistakes made and corrected, the patient accumulation of small improvements that nobody sees because they happen alone, on ranges like this one, on mornings like that one, before anyone is watching. Webb knew all of this. He knew it better than almost anyone. He had built his own ability out of the same materials: patience, repetition, honesty, time. He had spent years in rooms and places and situations that made a training range look like a quiet afternoon. Which is perhaps why the moment hit him the way it did. Not because he had been beaten by a better shooter, he had not been beaten. The contest was never really a contest. It was because he had looked at a young corporal and made an assumption dressed up as a challenge, and the young corporal had simply continued doing what he had been doing all along, his job, quietly and well. A man of Webb's experience knows the difference between losing and being reminded. This had been a reminder. The best kind, clean, without cruelty, delivered by a person who had not intended it as a lesson at all. The Smirk, when it first appeared that morning, had believed something. It had believed that rank and experience and a custom rifle and a long resume of difficult places were enough to predict what would happen when a younger, quieter, less decorated man picked up that weapon. The Smirk had been wrong. Not badly wrong. Not embarrassingly wrong. Just wrong the way assumptions are wrong when they stop paying attention to what is actually in front of them. Danny finished reassembling his rifle. He set it in the rack beside his bunk. He lay back and looked at the ceiling. Outside, the bass was going through its nightly rhythms, boots on pavement, distant engines, a voice somewhere calling something to someone else. The ordinary sounds of a place where people are always preparing for something. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow there would be another drill. Another range day, or a classroom, or a run, or any one of the 100 things that filled the days of a soldier in training. Another morning of cold coffee and gun oil and that particular smell that told your body to pay attention. He would show up early. He would leave late. He would let the work speak. That was enough. That had always been enough. On the other side of the base, Marcus Webb sat in the operations tent with 2 members of his team, going over maps and timing sheets for the next day. He was focused. He was professional. He was, as always, completely prepared. At some point during the evening, one of his teammates made a comment about the morning. Something light. The kind of remark that has a question built into it without asking the question directly. Webb looked up from the map. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Kid can shoot." 3 words. And then he went back to the map. That was the whole story. That was all of it. A smirk that arrived sure of itself. A young man who picked up a rifle that was not his and used it the way he used everything, carefully, honestly, without drama. A moment on a paper target 200 yards away that said something neither man had said out loud. And 3 words at the end of the day, offered by a man who did not give them easily, to a room that understood exactly what they cost him. Kid can shoot. Yes. He could.